recap last week's meetup, Ken and Alex did a random name generator for us. And it was an introduction to HTML, Bootstrap, and JavaScript. And what that random name generator did was it displayed a random name from a list of either games or a list of actors. And so this week, what we're going to do is style that project. So first things first, does everybody have their VS Code ready to go? And the starter file for tonight? Was there a link that was sent out for that?
No, I don't believe so, not yet. Is it on your guys' GitHub?
Yes, I could. Do you want to link that, Anne? There's, okay, so if you go to the GitHub, there's different branches, though, with that.
Would you like for me to give the starter file?
Yeah.
Zip? Okay.
Yeah. Can we drop that in the Zoom chat? Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead and send them both, just so they have it for reference. So what we're sending you right now is the starter file as well as the final file. And so if you want to have those open side by side, you can, just if you want to reference anything that's in the finisher file. So I'll give you guys a minute or two to open that up. And in the meantime, I will go ahead and clear. Am I still sharing screen?
Yes.
You see the yellow? Okay, let me close all this out. Does anybody still need this list of tools that we need for tonight? No? Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to pull in my VS Code here. Close my extensions, and then let's go to the Explorer, File Explorer, which this first icon at the top. You should all be familiar with VS Code, so I'll skip over that today. Your file structure should look like this once you have that open on your VS Code. So you should have a README file, an index file, a JavaScript folder with a script file inside of that, and then there's this settings.json file in the VS Code file. We can ignore that for now. Give me a thumbs up once you have that ready to go. Okay, so a few people. And if at any point you need us to slow down or to stop, or if you have any questions, just let us know. And we will make that time to address any questions or problems that you guys are having, okay? Cool, so are we okay to move on? All right, so next up, so just a couple of things before we start. We have stripped the HTML document of pretty much all the styling that we're going to do, or that was left behind in the previous meetup. And so let me just give you a preview of what that looks like right now. So if you have Live Server installed, please go ahead and right click on your index file and then open with Live Server. Or if you want to do the short code, it's Command on a Mac or Control on a Windows, L and then O. So we'll just go ahead and live serve that there. And this is what we are currently working with. And you'll notice it is a beautiful file that we're starting with. So this is what it looks like before we actually do any styling to it. So if you're familiar with fonts, this is basically Times New Roman. And then this is some random, probably Arial font. Okay. So let's move that out of the way here. Okay, so now that everybody has their starter file open, let's just go ahead, double check that your structure is the same as ours here. So like I said, you have a script file in a folder, index file, and then a README. And then what we're going to do next is we are going to show you what we're going to work towards. So you saw what the before is here. And what we're gonna get to is this here. So if you can tell the difference, good job. If not, we'll talk about that later. So we're gonna add like a background color, we're gonna stylize the fonts, and we're gonna do a whole bunch of cool stuff to it. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So how do we get from point A to point B? So as I showed you earlier, this is actually what we're gonna call a prototype, or basically a design that we're working towards. And who can create this design? It could be you if you're interested in UI, UX design work, or if you're not into that, a user interface or user interaction or UX, UI design team or designer will provide that to you. So that's the first step. The best thing to do is to work off of a prototype that is handed to you or that you created yourself. And in the night class or in the day class, I'm sorry, we've been using Adobe Xd, which is a really cool tool because it provides you the tools and resources for like graphics, color codes, animations, or any type of behaviors that are required for your application. So this is just a screenshot, but usually the Xd file will give you a lot more to work with. All right, so once you have your prototype ready, I'll keep this here so we can reference it later. The next thing to do is to style it. And there are a couple of ways that we can accomplish this. We can do inline styling. And what I mean by inline styling is, for example, I'm just gonna type it out here and you can follow along if you want to, but inline styling is in the HTML file itself. So we can do a style attribute like this, and then we can give it whatever class name we want here. I'm sorry, this is supposed to be class. No, style is correct. So style is the attribute, and then what we do is do a property and a value. Sorry about that. But we're not going to do this method tonight. The second way is to use internal or embedded styling. And what that is there would be a tag here, an HTML element that said style, and then there would be a closing tag here that said style. And then what you would basically do is you could do your CSS rule sets here, like so. But we're not going to do that way either. The way that we're going to do it today is we're going to do it externally. So we're going to create our own style sheet, and then we're going to connect or link to that external style sheet through our HTML file. So does anybody know what CSS stands for, just to start? Anybody that's not in the day class?
I was so ready, man.
Amen.
Cascading style sheet.
Right. Thank you, Bert. Yeah, so CSS stands for cascading style sheets. And so just to compare, I believe you all just finished up in Unity and C#. And in Unity, you were able to style things using the toolbars off to the sides. But with HTML, the way to style that would be to use CSS and styling. So instead of click to style, we have to code to style. And there's a lot of cool resources out there online, but I'm gonna drop in this link here. W3 Schools is a good resource for different languages and CSS, HTML, stuff like that. Just a dictionary definition, CSS is the language we use to style an HTML document. It describes how HTML elements should be displayed. And yeah, so it basically tells what the HTML should look like. And the benefits of using CSS are basically to make your life easier. If you think about HTML projects and HTML documents, you're gonna have maybe 20 to way more than 20 pages of HTML, and you don't wanna have to go in and style each HTML page. What you could do is connect each one of those to an external style sheet. So that way you can style everything at one time. Cool, so any questions so far? Yeah? Okay, cool. So next up, we are going to get into CSS syntax. So there are different ways that we can target our HTML. And so we can target, and I'll zoom in here so you all can see it a little bit better. We can target our HTML in a few ways. We'll cover these 3 ways tonight. So we can target it by the element name. So anything you see in pink is an HTML element name. So body or div or H1, which stands for heading 1, H2. We have, I think that's pretty much mostly what we have tonight that we'll be working with. There's inputs, labels, but we'll be focusing mostly on like divs or these other ones here. So that's one way. And the second way would be through IDs. And if you look through your HTML document, there are a couple IDs on some of the elements. So here we have one there and then there. And then last, we are going to target the HTML by class names. So you'll see that some of the elements already have some class names on them. And these are Bootstrap class names, basically, that we've left behind. So that'll be the third way that we'll look at tonight. So let's get started by creating a CSS file to work off of. So what you want to do first is in your Explorer or in your file hierarchy, we are going to create a new folder, and you can do that by either right-clicking new folder, or you can click the new folder icon here. So we're gonna name this folder CSS. And then inside that folder, we're going to create a new file. Again, you can right-click and do new file, or you can click this button here. Just make sure you're selected on that folder so that it creates that file inside. And we're going to call this file style.css. Okay. So now, once we have our CSS file created, what we need to do first for it to be able to work and talk to our HTML is we need to open up our index file that we had open earlier, and we need to link it. So we're going to do that in the header section of the HTML file. So find this tag that says head, and we're going to put that inside here. And let's do that under our Bootstrap CSS comments here. So the way to do that, to connect it, we're going to do an opening tag, also a less than symbol, and then we're going to do link because we want to link it to there. And then we want to do quotes. I'm sorry, no quotes, rel, and then set that equal to, and then double quotes, and then we're going to do style sheet. And if you have IntelliSense, it should automatically populate. So you can just click that or hit enter. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to target the path of that file. So we're going to do href. And if you hover over that and you want to learn more about what that does, it basically specifies the URL or the path that we're trying to target. And so to be able to target that, we're going to start with a period, and we're going to do a backslash. And then you'll notice that it'll show you the files that you have in that current folder or in your current project. So we're going to do, you can click CSS, and then you can click style.css if that popped up for you, or just type this out, /css/style.css. Cool. And then we want to do a closing tag there. And then I'm going to go ahead and format this just so it looks nice. Cool. So now what we want to do is we can jump into our CSS and start styling. So I'm going to open this side by side just so I can track the names a little bit better. But the first thing we're going to look at is we're just going to do a test to see if our CSS is linked to our HTML. So what we're going to do is we're going to target the body tag. So go ahead and copy that, or in your CSS, just type in body. And then what we want to do is add opening and closing curly braces, like so. And then we want to, let's change the background color. So start typing in background, and then it'll populate with a whole bunch of different options. And we're going to do background color. Now, after you do that and hit enter or select it, it'll pop up with a whole bunch of built-in colors that come with CSS. So I'm just going to do cyan for right now. Cool. And so let's see if that worked. Let's go ahead and refresh, and you should have a background color on your live serve. Did that work for everybody? Yeah, awesome. Cool. So next, what we're going to do, now that you're all connected, just before we move on, it's always a good idea to check before you start doing all your work, just to make sure it's connected, so that way you can see it changing live in front of your eyes. So like if I wanted to change this to, let's say, maroon, it's going to change right there. All right, so I'm going to undo that. There. Now, so let's dive in a little bit deeper into CSS syntax. So like I mentioned before, there are 3 ways that we'll be focusing on tonight. And so the first one was targeting the HTML element name. And we just did that actually up here. So this is the first way to do it. So the structure of CSS is the selector, which here is body. And then each one of these is a declaration inside of this rule set. So again, we have a selector, and then we have a declaration, which is made of a property and a value. So our background color was our property, and then cyan was our value. And then the whole thing together here is called a rule set. So this is basically targeting an HTML element name. So let's try something else. In the HTML file, you should have this section here called test area. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by creating a new element. And we're going to do an opening tag and call it div, like the ones we have below. And then we're going to close it off. And then it should automatically populate a closing tag for you there. And so what I'm going to have you type in here inside those 2 tags is just put your name. You could do first name, last name, or whatever string you want. But I'm just going to do my name. And then so what we're going to do now is we're going to practice again targeting an HTML element name. So as we did earlier, body was our selector. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this div, and we're going to move that into our CSS. And that is our selector for this rule set. And then what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and give this the font color a new color instead of just black. So we're going to do color, and that's going to be red. So now we can jump over into our live serve, and you'll notice the colors changed to red. Cool. So next, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to target by ID. So we're going to jump back into our HTML file, and we're going to give this ID, this div that we just created, an ID attribute. So we're going to do ID and set that equal to, this is going to be called, we're going to start easy, custom ID. So now what we want to do is we're going to copy this, and we're going to paste it into our CSS file. And then we're going to do opening and closing curly braces. And so to target an ID, you actually have to put a special character before the selector. And for IDs, that's a hashtag. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So to target HTML element name, you don't need to prefix it with anything, but to do an ID, you do need to put a hashtag. So for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to change the background color to, and then you can select whatever color you want here. I'm just going to say yellow. And let's see what happened in our CSS or in our live serve. So look, our div that we had set with our custom ID now has a yellow background. So we have essentially targeted only this element in our HTML. Any questions so far? Everybody good to this point? Yeah, Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. So the last way that we're going to go over tonight is target using class names. So let's go ahead and jump back into our HTML here. And we're going to give it a class attribute. And we're going to set that equal to, and then double quotes for now. And to start, we'll keep it simple and just do class 1. And so just like before, we're going to copy and we're going to paste that into our CSS file, opening, closing curly braces. But this time it's going to be a little bit different from your ID and your element name. So when you're targeting a class, you are going to add a period in front of that class name. And then that allows us to reference this class, or it reads that and connects it. So for this one, we are going to do, let's do another background color. And we're going to set that to, let's do pink. No, not pink, magenta. And let's take a look at what happened in our CSS. Nothing happened. So this is where it gets a little interesting. So cascading obviously is like a waterfall, and what CSS does, it reads it from top to bottom. But in this case, I'm going to get into something called specificity. And basically, it's like a measurement of how specific something is. So an ID is going to be more specific than a class name on an element. It's calculated with the element name, the class, and the ID. So this is more of the advanced stuff. But what we're going to do to fix that right now is we're going to do an important flag. And so what you would do after your color name is do an exclamation point, and we're going to do important. Okay, so this doesn't stand for not important. This stands for, this is just an important flag. And so if we jump back in, we see that that has overwritten our previous background color. Whoops, our previous background color here. And so now pink, or the magenta, is now taking precedence over the yellow. Cool. Does anybody have any questions about that? There's a resource online through MDN, the Mozilla Developers Network. Let me just copy and paste that into the chat if you guys want to learn more about that. So cool. So let's go ahead and do a couple more. So we're going to do class 2, and then we're going to copy this over. Let's start with a period, paste that in, and then class 2. So in class 2, what we're going to do is we're going to do a border, and we're going to set the weight of the border. Let's do 1 pixel for now, and that's 1 px. And then, oh, you know what? Sorry, not border weight, it's border width. Made that mistake earlier. And then the next one we're going to do is we're going to target the style of the border. So border dash style, and we're going to do solid. And then last, we're going to change the color of the border. So border dash color, and we're going to change that to, let's say, black for now, so we can see it. So now jump over to your live serve, and look, we've added a border to that div. I'm going to make it a little thicker for you guys so you can see it a little bit better. Cool. All right, so now that we know how to do different ways, or now that we know how to target different pieces in our HTML, what exactly can we do with styling? So if you can think about it, animations, colors, sizing, spacing, you can probably do it with CSS. Tonight, we actually will be going with our prototype. This doesn't have it, but the background actually is animated, and Ann will go over that a little bit later. So, so yeah, the possibilities are endless with CSS. So next thing we're going to do is similar to last week, is we're just going to add our Bootstrap back in so we can access their CSS library as well. So in your code, you should already have it in your HTML file. So navigate to the top portion of your HTML file. It should be around lines 9-ish. And what we're going to do is we're going to select all this that's been commented out minus this part up here. And then we're going to uncomment that out. So it's command / is a short code for Mac. If you're on a PC, it's control /. So let's take a look at what that did here. So cool. So now let me undo that so you guys can see the difference. So this is without Bootstrap and this is with Bootstrap. So it's changed the font from the default to now sans serif. And it might look different if you're on a PC, but that's what it looks like. Cool. Did anybody have any trouble connecting Bootstrap? No, everybody's good. Okay, cool. So congratulations, you've connected your second style sheet now.
I
Or
want to show
reconnected
the.
it.
You want to show the difference between it in and out again, real quick?
Yeah, so this is with, let me slide this over. So this is with Bootstrap and this is without. With, without, without. All right, cool. So now that you see the difference between Bootstrap and basic HTML, what we're going to do is we're going to use one of Bootstrap's classes to change the color of these buttons. And so what we're going to do is in our HTML file, go ahead and do a search, a Command or Control F, and we're going to search for the word light. Oh, I'm sorry, not light, primary. So Bootstrap comes with predefined colors, and I'm going to drop in another link for you all in the Zoom chat so you can see those there. And I'm going to pull in a window so you all can see what that looks like as well. So these are some of the Bootstrap colors. So as I mentioned earlier, we're looking for primary in our HTML file. So here you'll see it's in a couple of different spots, but this is basically this blue color. So what we want to do for this one is we're going to change it to light. So the best way to do that would be to, you could do, if you're on your search, you can do a replace all and do light. And if you want to be really cool, you can double click in your HTML file and you can hit on your keyboard Command or Control, depending on your system, Command Shift L. And what that'll do is it'll select all of the instances of that in your document and you can type over it. Whoops, you spell that right. So we have just changed our button from that blue primary color to now white. Pretty cool stuff, right? So next, since we have that all set up, we are going to, give me a second here. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to practice with a couple more style sheets. So I am going to introduce you all to, if you haven't already used it, go ahead and open up a new browser window. And we're going to do, we're going to type in Google Fonts. So go ahead and click into that one there. And tonight we'll be using two fonts. The first one, go ahead and type in monotone. And then this is the one here. It should look like this. So once you have that open, click into it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select the style. And then look at that. So it provides us with links or some code snippets that we can copy and paste into our HTML file. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and find our other font, which is, so go ahead and go back to the home page. And the next font we're going to be using is Lobster. And we're going to do this regular Lobster here. So go ahead and click into that, hit select the style. And what Google does is it combines that into one link. So now copy and paste this into your HTML file. I'll go ahead and send it in the Zoom chat too if you don't have it up. So we're going to do that in the same spot as our CSS. Let's just do it above it right here. So if you have your file open, you have your style sheet link here. We're going to paste it right in there. All right, I'm going to format that. Zoom out a little bit for you all to see that. And then go back to your browser. And what we also need is we need these rules for our CSS file. So go ahead and copy that. Just going to copy. And in our CSS document, we're going to paste that there. And for now, just comment it out so that way it doesn't give you any errors. Cool. Was everybody at that point? Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and we're going to start by giving our header, our RNG header an ID. So find this line. For some of you, it might say random name generator, but if it does, go ahead and switch that now to just be RNG, since we know this is going to be our random name generator. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an ID to this one here, and we're going to call this title. And we're actually using title because in our JavaScript file from last week, we need that to connect to our, we need that ID for it to work properly. So go ahead and do that there. And then in our, let's go ahead and copy this ID into our CSS. And remember, since it's an ID, we need to prefix that with a hashtag. Let's open that up. And then what we're going to do first is we are going to, take the snippet that we got earlier from Google Fonts, and we're going to copy that. We want monotone for the header. We're going to copy and paste that into our title rule set. Okay, so let's check it out. Let's check out what that did. So it switched the font. So now it's really small. So we want this, remember what we want it to look like is this here. So let's go ahead and kick that size up. So what we're going to do next is we're going to target the font size. And we are going to set that to 300 pixels. And bam, oops. We have made our title huge. And so the last thing we're going to do for now is we're going to change the text color or the font color. So that property is just color. So anytime you see color, it's always going to target the text itself. So we're going to set this to white. And there we go. We're a couple steps closer to point B. And that's probably a little hard to see on your end, but it's there. And then the last thing we're going to do for now is we're going to do the same thing, but we are going to add an ID to our section that's going to hold the name once we click the button. So go ahead and find the line that says name will appear here. It should be around line 62. And what we're going to do is we're going to give that ID as well. And this is going to be ID of name. And again, we need this ID to connect to our JavaScript. So we're going to copy this. We're going to go into our CSS hashtag, since it's an ID, name, opening, closing curly braces, open that up. And so what we want to do now is we want to use the second font that we grabbed from Google Fonts. So lobster. So copy and paste that in here. And then let's just take a look at our live serve. So there you go. The font has changed on that portion as well. And then lastly, we're gonna kick it up a couple. So let's do again font, sorry, excuse me, font size. And we're gonna do 60 pixels this time. We don't want it too huge. And then we're also gonna do, we're gonna give it a margin. And what a margin does, it's gonna give space around that element. And this time we're gonna do 50 pixels. And so now you'll see that there's space on the left of it, on the top of it, on the bottom, and then you can't really see it on the right side, but there's space there as well. So let me comment this out so you can see the difference. And then I just want to kind of explain a little bit more about what margin is. So when you order like an Amazon package, there's obviously the item itself, right? And so if you think about a box, so the item is the content, and then the padding is the space around that item. So like the bubble wrap or the space inside the box. And then the border is the box itself. And then the margin is the space outside of the boxes, between the boxes on the conveyor belt, basically. So that's what we just did here is we added space around this Amazon box. This is not sponsored by Amazon, but yeah. And that's it. I think that's all that we have. Just go ahead and double check to see if your live serve is accurate or if it's how you wanted it to be. And at this point, we can take any questions, or you can take a quick break.
I have a question. I may have missed it, but what is the difference between?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And thank you, Joseph. So my name is Anote, and I'll be taking over and show you all how we can get from point A to point B. So can you see the animation part? That's what we'll be doing this evening. So before we start, I just wanted to say that you can stop me at any point, interrupt me if you have any questions. Joseph and I will be happy to answer them. Or if I'm going a little bit too fast, you can slow me down. If not, I'm just going to roll with it. All right.
I'm gonna ask one question.
Yeah.
How do you get the screen to run? That screen?
Which screen?
That
So
the one
for
with
the
all
live serve?
animations. Yeah.
Oh, the live serve. You will have to go here. So if you haven't did your live serve, so just click on the file that you have, right click and live serve here. Open with live server.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right, so let's go back and recap what Joseph showed us before. We created the ID tag called title, which is here. And with the font name monotone, cursive, which he showed us how we can grab that directly at fontgoogle.com, and we copy and paste it right under the head tag in the HTML section, which is right here. Okay. And he also gave it a font size of 300 pixel right here. Perfect. Now, he did the same thing for the name tag as well. If you remember, that would be the section where the name will appear when you click the generating button. So right here. He gave it a font size of 60 pixel. And also this time he changed it up with the font family of lobster cursive. And he added a margin of 50 pixel. And what that does is just create a space around the HTML element. In this case, the div class, which is here. So that's the ID name, and that's the div class. All right, so he already talked about what CSS means, and that's cascading style sheet. The way I like to think of it is that HTML is the canvas, while cascading style sheet is like the painting part. You know, for us female, our face is the canvas, right? And the cascading style sheet would be this cosmetic part where we throw our liners, lashes, blushes, etc. Christy, like, no. Okay, now let's continue creating this magic. So I'm just going to be deleting everything on top of the title tag, and I'm just leaving the title and the name tag for now, but the rest we won't be needing that. So go ahead and delete everything. And then I'm just going to, delete the white as well, because we can't see it with the white background. So that's what you should have. Let me go ahead and delete up here as well, the test area. Okay, everybody good? Yeah, all right. So first thing first, we want to target the body tag, which defines the document body. If you were to look back at the HTML site, the body element is what contains all of the content on the HTML, such as the heading, the paragraph, images, footers. So anything that's in here is called the body, okay? And there can only be one body element in an HTML document. And you would definitely learn more about this once you start learning about the front end. So for now, I'm just going to carry on. So again, we are targeting the body. So that's body, followed by an open and close bracket. And inside this bracket, we're going to give it a height of 100 VH, followed by semicolon. You can't really tell the difference now, but what VH basically means is viewport height. It's pretty much whenever I'm doing a full screen, it will always stay at 100% view, okay? All right, so let's start by adding some colors now. I mean, we're pretty much tired of seeing this plain white page anyway, right? All right, so in the same body tag, I just hit enter to go on to the next line. We want to specify it as a background. So background. So what we are doing here is we want to set all background style property at once. So looking back at point B, you can see that there are two color transitioning into one another. Let me just full screen that. And that's what we want. Okay, there is a property in CSS that will allow us to create this effect, and it is called linear gradient. You can learn more about that. I believe Joseph also provided that earlier. And for now, let's continue by adding the name linear gradient. So linear gradient, and look at that, it already popped up, and that's what we want. So go ahead and click on that. And inside of that, let's give it some angle. So let's give it 132 degree DEG, and then comma, and followed by two color choices. Now you can choose whatever color you want. If you want to follow along with me, I'm going to use hex color, and that is EC5118CB. And then my second choice is hex color 1665C1. Okay, don't forget your semicolon. All right, if you did it correctly, you should see your color choices. Yay! Did anyone not get it to work? I would take silent as it worked. So moving on. All right, so underneath the background, I also press enter again to go on to the next line. We want to specify the size of the background color. So let's set that as, so background size, as size, okay? And then we want to give it a 400%, that's 400. And then our semicolon. So what that means is that the first set background color is the width, and the second set is the height. If we were to go back to our live share, we won't see our blue color. And that's okay. That's what we want to start out with, because remember, we want that transitioning effect to show. So that second color will show up once we start the animation process. Okay. And that will lead us to the next step, the fun part, the animation part. So let's create the animation pieces. for here, we want to specify the word animation. So animation. Okay. And that is why CSS is really powerful. It allows us to create an animation of HTML element without even using any JavaScript. Pretty cool, huh? Cool. Next, we want to give this a name. So we will be referencing back to this. You could call it whatever you like. I am going to call it background gradient. Okay. And I want this animation to be roughly at about 20 seconds, 20s. And then the default value is at ease and for infinite. Oh, there you go. And what that means is that the animation should be played infinite time, forever. So let's go back. Let's do refresh. Does it work? I think I spelled something wrong here. Oh, no. Nothing should happen actually at this point. I forgot we're just calling it in the body for now. So yeah, if nothing happened, you're on the right track. All right. Okay, so that's it for the body selector. But before we do that, let's just give it a text color white. So text color, just say white. And then let's align everything because right now it's not aligned. So we're just going to say text, align, and then let's say center. Okay. So what that is that everything in the body element, text color will be white and the text will all be centered. So look at that. Are we good? Got that to work? Awesome. Again, that is it for the body element. So go ahead and press enter to go on to the next line. And right here, we want to add a keyframe to our animation. So what the keyframe main job is that it'll define what should happen at specific moment during the animation. Okay, CSS has a property name. It's add keyframes, and we want to specify that by just typing the @ symbol, and the word keyframe, which should show up right here. Okay. And what we want to do next is we want to follow it by the animation name. So can anyone tell me what the animation name would be?
Background gradient.
Awesome, that is correct. So, or whatever name you chose. So mine would be background gradient. Okay, followed by 2 open and close curly braces. And then inside the curly braces, we want to add a percentage to the animation duration. So for example, 0% is the beginning of the animation and 100% is at the end. So these keyframes can then be controlled either by a shorthand animation property to give it more control over how those keyframes can and should be manipulated, okay? So let's go ahead and start with 0%. So we're just gonna say 0%. Oops, it should be inside the curly braces. So 0%, and then with an open and closed curly braces as well. I mean, is it bracket or braces? I keep saying braces. Brackets, okay.
That's braces. It's braces.
Oh, braces.
Okay. If you write background gradient, do you have to have a space?
Oh, you don't have to.
Okay.
No, we're fine. Okay. Cool. So inside this curly braces, we want to target the background position. Okay. So let's say background position, background, and then position. where it is going to start and where is it going to end. So we want to say that let's start at 0% to 50%. Okay. And then let's take a look. Okay, we got something going on, but we're not there yet. We want that effect going, right? Okay. So at this point, I'm just going to copy and paste this and do it 2 more times. So easy way to do that is just copy this top one and then repeat that 2 more times. So enter, paste, enter, and paste. And then what I want to do here is that the second percentage is I want it to be at 50%. With the starting point, this time, let's put it at 100% and then leave it at 50%. And for the last one, say 100%, and we'll just keep it the same as the starting position right here. So 0 and 50%. And you should see your background animation at this point. So let's make it fix. And that is what we should see. Anybody else got that? Anyone didn't get it to work? It takes silence as we're good. Perfect. So let's continue on. So looking back at point B, put this up a little bit. We'll see this text box here, and that is our next step. So how do we create that? I'll show you. So first we need to go to the HTML side to create a div class name for that, right? So go back to your HTML site or files, and then we want to target the container section, which is here. So line 35. And then we want to give it a name called Glow, G-L-O-W. Okay, so that's what we're only doing on the HTML side. Everyone's good? Okay, let's go back to our style file now, and let's grab that same class name we just did. And right here, we're going to put, since it's a class attribute, what are we going to put? Christy.
A period.
That's correct. Period. And then the name that we just called is Glow, followed by open and close curly braces. Okay. And then in here, let's give it style. So if you were to look here, it's like a border, right? So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to call it a border. And then we want it to be dotted. We don't want solid because it's not solid. So let's say dotted. It should pop right up. Okay. And then let's give the border color white as well. Okay, white. And then bump that up to 20 pixels. And you should see it happening here on the live server. We're good? Okay, so let's continue. Now we're going to add the margin area to the top of the element. So I'm just going to press enter to get to the new line. And I am going to say margin top. Okay, margin top. And then let's say we want to give it 50 pixels. Okay. And then let's do the same for the bottom. So margin, bottom. Same thing. Oops. Margin, bottom. There we go. And 50 pixels. So what that did was just give the spacing between the subtitle and the footer element. And I'm being specific at this point because that's where I want my margin instead of just saying margin. If I just say margin, the CSS has just assumed that I'm talking about margin on all four side corners. So I'm letting you know I just want the margin on the top and the bottom. That's it. Okay. Okay, let's continue by adding some font size to it. So I'm going to say font size of 20 pixel. Okay, and then I want to create that orange border shadow effect by simply specifying the key value as box shadow. So if we were to go to B, we'll see that it has some sort of color behind it, like a glow. So that's what I'm doing. Say box shadow, and then let's do 0px, 4px, and 50px. So what that is just saying that I want 0 pixel for the offset X, and then 4 pixel for the offset Y, and then 50 pixel for the blur radius. And then let's give it some color. Choose any color you want. I am going to use the hex color code FF8383. Okay, and you should see your shadow effect or your border. Cool, we're good. Okay, so the last one for this, we're just going to give it a border radius, style border radius, and then we're going to say 6 pixel, and that and what that is just styling the outer edge of the border. So I'm not sure if you can tell, but let me just control that out. It will be this pointy edge right here. So that's what we're doing. Put that back in, and then it should be good. See? Cool. So now you should see the orange shadow effect on the live server. Are we good? Everybody got it to work? Awesome. So now let's go ahead and create the hover effect that will show a different color when we hover over it. So if we were to go to B, we hover over that, it shows a blue color. Okay. We want to create the that same class name we did as above. So let's target that. So class name is .glow. And this time we want to say hover. So HOVR, there's the drop down, and then open and close curly braces. Okay. So we're just saying that this class we want to target, we want to give it a hover effect. So inside of this curly braces, we want to give it a box shadow. So pretty much it's going to be the same for this effect. So I'm just going to copy that, and then I'm just going to paste it here. Okay, and for this one, I'm just going to change out the color. I don't want orange. Most likely it won't show. So we need a different color for that. I'm using X color 8392FF. And you should see both the orange shadow, and when you hover over the mouse, you will see the blue. There you go. Awesome. Any questions? No? Cool. We're almost there, so let's see the point B and point A. We're almost there. But for the point B, the container looked a little bit small. So that's what we're going to do, is keep that container tiny. So go ahead and press enter. And in order to do that, we need to first grab the div class name .container. So if you remember, it was on the HTML side is this part right here. So that's what we're grabbing. So dot container, open and close curly braces. And let's say we want to give it a max width of 800 pixels. Okay. And then we want to say, give it a width of 100%. There you go.
What's the difference between max width and width right there?
Joseph?
Okay, so I dropped it in the chat too, but Anne, if you could do me a favor and change the browser size. So go ahead and take it all the way out to the edge for now. So what the max width is doing is it's limiting your div to 800 pixels. But when you do width of 100%, if you make the window smaller now, and then bring that, no, go ahead and close, make your browser smaller, and then zoom into 100% for now. And then, yeah, make your browser a little bit smaller, and then shrink it down from left to right.
Oh, you want me to
So
zoom? Oh, just like
yeah,
this.
open that in and out, please. So go out to the left again, all the way to the edge of your screen.
I'm pretty, yeah, this is on my
So
screen.
there. And then go ahead and shrink it down to like 1/3 of your screen.
Okay, got the edge here.
Keep going.
Down, right?
I think it's just a little laggy.
Left and
Yeah,
left and,
I'm really lagging.
no worries. So left and right, just close it in.
Okay.
There you go. So it's not working for the font because the font is at like 300 pixels. But if you notice the container, that the glow container is now taking up 100% of your browser. So when you open it up bigger, it will only go as far as either 100% or when it reaches a max width of 800 pixels, it'll stop. So that's where you can use two of those properties at the same time. Did that make sense?
Yes, it did.
Okay, cool.
So something to keep in mind too, we haven't really gone into Bootstrap that much, but container is a Bootstrap class. And it has a bunch of different aspects already allotted to it. So whenever they change things here, they're going to change every single container right there to max width of whatever and width of whatever. So that's when your targeting becomes very important. But for this project, it's perfectly fine. It'll work very, very well for their purposes. So, yeah.
Cool. So let's move on to styling up the button now. So we want to add a class name called button in our file HTML, okay, on the side. So let's go down and locate. It will be on the same line as the name gin button. So for me, it's line 66. Here, so right after the light, let's give it a class name of button size. So I'm just going to say BTN, short for button, and then size, like so. Okay. And that's all what I'm doing here. Good. Okay. Let's go back to our style CSS file, and then we're going to grab that same style name that we just put on the HTML side. So dot button size, open and close curly braces. And in here, we want to give it a padding. So let's give it some padding of 15 pixel by 15 pixel by 15 pixel by 15 pixel. Okay. So what that is just meaning that I want all of these sides to be equal. So meaning top, right, bottom, and left. I want it to all be equal size. Okay. Now let's go ahead and give it some margin bottom. of 50 pixel. Okay, and let's see. Now, and you should get some margin right under here. Comment that back in, and there you go. Got some margin there. Cool. Now let's create that hover effect on the button where it changes color. So if we were to go back to point B, the hover effect is there. So let's create that section now. Same thing as we did for that dot glow hover, but this time we want to target the button class. So we're going to say dot button and then hover with the open and close curly braces. Okay. And inside of that, we want to give it some colors. So we're just going to specify that and say, give it some background color. You can choose whatever background color you want at this point, but if you're following with me, I'm going to use hex code 5247438. Okay, and that will create a light opacity color in the background. And then let's give it some text color of FF33F1. So that's the color that I choose. You can choose whatever color you want. Okay, refresh here and let's check it out. There you go. So we just created the background color for this button and we changed the color to this neon pink. We good? Okay, moving on, let's go ahead and we are pretty much close at this point. You can tell, just need some more styling to do and we are done, right? So we want to go ahead and give the button a little round edge, just like here. So by doing that, let's grab the button class again. So that's .btn, and then open and close curly braces. And then let's give it a border radius of 20 pixels. Okay. And we also want to add some padding in there. So let's give it some padding of 15 pixels by 50 pixels. And the flag important. So Joseph kind of explained what that is and what that means. I can go ahead and explain it a little more is that it's just a rule in a way that make your CSS cascade also have the rule you feel that are most crucial always be applied. So a rule that has the flag not important property will always be applied no matter where that rule appears in your CSS document. Okay, so we are finished with styling the button. If yours is identical to mine, that is perfect. So anyone else not get close to mine? I will take silence as we're good. Cool. So let's create that box style where the name will appear, which is this area right here. By doing that, let's go back to the HTML side and add a class name, or actually it's already there. Oh, that's the ID. I apologize. So we're gonna go ahead and add a class name called name GenBG. So it would be right here after the align item center on line 57. So we're just going to add in that name, GenBG, short for background. Okay. We're good. We're going back to the CSS file and let's grab that same class name we just added name gen background. They open and close curly braces. And inside, we want to give it a background color of FF27. So what that is just a dark color with 27% opacity. Okay. And then let's give it some margin. So let's give it some margin top of 50 pixel. There you go. It just created the space between here and there. So if I were to comment that out, see that it's pretty squished to the button there. And then if we give it some margin top, it'll be perfect line in the middle. Okay. And that is what we have so far. So everybody good at this point? Do we have it all? Yes. Perfect. Now on to the last and final step, the footer. I will hand this back to Joseph and he will show us how to get that last and final piece here. Okay. Do we need a quick break? We're good. Okay. Awesome, Joseph.
Okay, cool. Did you mind pushing to the GitHub, and then I'll go ahead and open that up.
Sure, I'll do that.
Up for you all. Okay, so what we're going to do is scroll down to the bottom of your HTML file, and you'll notice that you have your footer wrapped in a footer tag. And so we're going to go ahead and take that, use it as a selector name. Let's jump down to the bottom of our CSS file, paste that in. Does anybody remember what we need to prefix this with in order to target it properly? I see a hashtag from Bert. Anybody else? Okay, so it's actually not a hashtag. It's actually just this. That was a trick question. There's no prefix to this because it's an element. It's an element name. So since we're only targeting that, we don't need to prefix it with anything. So good guess, but nothing for this one. So we're going to start first with, let's go ahead and change our font size. So right now, let me zoom out a little bit. Right now it's pretty small. So we're going to go font size. And let's just mess with it. Let's go 5 pixels and see what that does to it. Super tiny. So we don't really want that. What we want it to actually be is 15, just for the purpose of this exercise here. So once you have that set, the next property that we're going to target is the letter spacing. And so letter spacing is the space between each letter from left to right or horizontally. And so what we want to do is change our letter spacing. Let's experiment. Let's do like 100 pixels. See what that does. Oh, I have a typo. Make sure you spell it right. So check that out. It's a lot of space, huh? It's like Zynga days. If any of you ever use Zynga. So we don't want 100. We want to do 7 in this case. So cool. It's a little bit closer to what we want. And so in our prototype, which I think I closed, you don't want to see all that junk. You want to have everything be uppercase. So what we're going to do is target a property called text-transform. And then you'll see there's a few different options that we can select as our value. So in this case, we're going to choose uppercase. And let's close that off. I'm going to just format it really quickly. And then let's check out what happened. So that changed everything in there from lowercase to uppercase, which is exactly what we wanted. And so the last thing that we want to do for our footer is we are going to add space. So it's not so close to our project. We just want it to be kind of out of the way. But just, it's a credit. So we want it to be closer to the bottom. So we're going to have padding And remember, this is adding space around the content that we're targeting. So footer, it's going to add padding to the footer. So we're going to do 25 pixels, and then we're going to do 0. So again, what 25 and 0 mean is 25 pixels is going to give 25 pixels of padding to the y-axis and 0 padding to the x-axis. Because essentially, we don't really need to pad the left and right because it's already centered. So if you want to see the difference, if I were to add 100 pixels on that second one, it's going to give space here and essentially push that to the next line. So we don't want that. So let's keep that at 0. And cool, we are at point B. But one thing I want you guys to add to the bottom of your document is we are going to take our, let's just copy and paste line 78. So this div class column of 12 that has my name and Ann's name in it. Let's just go ahead and copy that and paste it to the next line. And then let's replace that. And let's just do styled by, and then your name. And then if you want to mess around with it a little bit more, you can give it an ID and say, let's say signature. And then we can mess around with that. Remember, since it's now an ID, we want to target that using a prefix of hashtag signature, opening, closing curly braces, and then let's see, what do we want to do? We want to, let's do font size of 50. And let's do font style, italic. And then we also, let's add bold onto that as well and see if that works. Okay, the italic did not work. Let me try that again. Let's just do italic. Let me see if bold italic works. No, so let's just keep it as italic. And there you go. You have successfully styled your first project if you are in the night class.